Welcome to A Moment of Xen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom Xen Sams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, fintech, cannabis, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, Xen Sams.
Welcome back, New York City, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Xen Sams, celebrating 6 incredible years on air and marking episode 250. No repeats. Here's to another exciting one. It's truly a pleasure spending my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for tuning in every Saturday and for engaging with me on social media. That connection is what makes all of this worthwhile. Continue to follow me on Instagram at Xen Sams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z, XENSAMS. And remember, all episodes stream Sundays at 2 p.m. directly on our YouTube channel. And we also upload directly on our OTT platform, Your Home TV, on our own channel at mox.yourhometv.com. Welcome back, where alongside our experts on the microphone, we explore film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, cannabis, fintech, health, and yes, everything in between, always through the lens of the millennial mom's perspective. In the Heart of Influence segment, brought to you by DiamondLake and its subsidiaries, we're joined by Sam Amsterdam, founder of Amsterdam Group and the Global Communications and Strategic Counsel to DiamondLake. The topic of conversation today is how influence is built, protected, and sustained in today's high-stakes environment, including narrative control, leadership credibility, strategic communications, that crisis preparedness, and the role of modern media and social platforms in shaping trust and community. In the Sculpting the Future segment, brought to you by Alloclay and Tigers Aesthetics, we're joined by Dr. Kamakshi Zeidler. She's a board-certified plastic surgeon and the founding physician partner at Aesthetics. Today, we're covering implant-free regenerative breast enhancement, exploring FDA-regulated structural fat allografts, patient safety, natural outcomes, explant alternatives, and the future of regenerative aesthetics. In the Hydration with Heart segment, brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut, we're joined by Deshaun Goldson. He's a former NFL Pro Bowl safety, founder of the Highest Point Foundation, and youth coach and a mentor. We're going to chat from professional athletics to community leadership, mentorship, youth development, legacy building, and creating access and stability for the next generation through sports, and why it's more important than ever to shape our next generation. In the We Play It Forward segment, brought to you by the We Play It Forward Foundation, benefiting the Cure Sanfilippo Foundation, we're chatting childhood Alzheimer's and Sanfilippo hiding in plain sight. When a rare disease doesn't look the way we expect, why early diagnosis matters, and how time changes outcomes for families living with Sanfilippo syndrome. We're going to be joined by Kathy Lindquist. She's an occupational therapist, assistant, and parent advocate of Sanfilippo syndrome. Marty Lindquist, deputy chief FDNY, father and advocate of Sanfilippo syndrome, and Bridget Lindquist. She's a young adult living with Sanfilippo syndrome type 3B and a rare disease advocate. Coming up next in the We Play It Forward segment, benefiting the Cure Sanfilippo Foundation. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Your Home TV with Kathy Ireland and their channel partners. Head to yourhometv.com for free, family-friendly programming, streaming 24/7.
The Kelly Williams Show is brought to you by Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events. Tune in and turn on your happy. Kelly Williams is full of energy and incredible guests. Watch her anytime, free programming on Your Home TV network, and do follow her on social media for a chance to win monthly prizes. Check out The Kelly Williams Show on yourhometv.com.
Tune in to A Moment of Xen, Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. Welcome back, New York City. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Xen Sams. In today's We Play It Forward conversation, it's one that demands our full attention because rare diseases don't just challenge families, they challenge systems. Sanfilippo syndrome is often described as childhood dementia. It's a progressive neurodegenerative disease caused by the body's inability to break down heparin sulfate. It's a toxic sugar that slowly accumulates in the brain over the central nervous system. Over time, that buildup leads to cognitive decline, loss of motor skills, seizures, and somewhat of a shortened life expectancy. It affects fewer than 1 in 70,000 children, which means most physicians will never diagnose a single case in their entire career. Think about that. And when diseases are this rare, well, timing becomes everything. Today, I'm joined by Kathy and Marty Lindquist of Wonton, New York, whose two daughters, Margaret, who's 21, and Bridget, 18, are living with Sanfilippo syndrome type 3B. Kathy is an occupational therapy assistant working daily with children who have complex needs. Marty is a deputy chief with the FDNY, recently celebrating 30 years of service. Congratulations, Marty. Together, they spent years navigating subtle symptoms, teenage onset seizures, and diagnoses until answers finally came during adolescence and early childhood. Bridget is also joining us right now, not just as a patient, but as a young woman with goals, humor, creativity, and an incredible voice that has become deeply influential in the rare disease community. This is a conversation about missed windows, about preservation versus progression, and about why, for Sanfilippo families, today is their best day. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Bridget, so excited to have you. Marty, Kathy, so excited to speak with you today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so let's get into this. I mean, one of the most misunderstood aspects of rare disease is that late diagnosis doesn't mean late disease, right? In Sanfilippo, toxic buildup begins at birth, even when symptoms are subtle or invisible, and research does show that once neurological damage occurs, it can't technically be reversed or only slowed down or stabilized, so to speak, which means that years spent searching for answers aren't neutral years. They're critical years, right? We all understand that. So I'm going to start with you, Kathy and Marty. For years, your daughters were living full, engaged lives, school, friendships, goals, with nothing that immediately pointed to a rare genetic disorder, to my understanding. And seizures didn't begin until their teens, as I was told, and the diagnosis didn't come until Bridget was 15 and Margaret was already a young adult. So what was it like searching for answers for so long? And how did it feel when Sanfilippo type 3B finally became the answer?
I felt like Margaret and Bridget were being supported at their younger ages in school. They were getting the support that they needed. So we weren't necessarily searching for answers when they were toddlers or in elementary school. It really wasn't until Bridget started having seizures. The doctors were like, something serious is going on here. And Margaret was already having seizures. She started seizures at 13 years old. A few years later, then Bridget started having the seizures. So I would say that was really when it became serious.
And in speaking with their neurologist, she was also very surprised that Bridget was having seizures. And, she was the one who recommended going to a geneticist, doing genetic testing. But even with that, we weren't thinking Sanfilippo, we weren't thinking rare disease. We kind of did it almost just to check it off the box, check that box and say, okay, we checked that, not really expecting to get a diagnosis. And then when we did, it was something we had never heard of. We started researching, obviously speaking to the doctors. They were very surprised too. And especially
you clearly are both carriers, correct?
Yes. We're both carriers, but we never knew we were carriers until we were tested along with the girls.
Wow. Well, what you're describing reflects what experts call a diagnostic odyssey. And for rare disease families, that odyssey often lasts 5 to 7 years and sometimes longer. So you're kind of fitting that description. And that delay isn't just emotional. It directly affects outcomes, because when treatments like gene therapy or enzyme replacement are closest to helping, when they're are closest to helping is before regression begins, is what I wanted to say. So families aren't asking for miracles. They're asking not to lose time they can never get back, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about adolescence. So adolescence is already a period of identity formation, neurologically, emotionally, and socially. And to receive a diagnosis like this, Bridget, at 15 means suddenly reinterpreting your entire childhood through a medical lens, but still trying to plan a future. So you were diagnosed at 15, and after growing up and going to school and making friends and living what most people would say a normal life, what was it like to learn that something this serious had been there all along without anyone knowing?
It was hard to believe at first that I had this diagnosis and it was there all that time because I was never affected by Sanfilippo like other Sanfilippo patients were. My doctor explained to me that everyone is on their own journey and it's a very wide range. And I have an attenuated gene of Sanfilippo, which means that it's very slower affecting me.
And I mean, look, what's so powerful about your voice is that it challenges the idea that diagnosis defines identity, right?
Mhm.
Now, it's frequently taught as an early onset disorder with visible developmental regression, but the emerging data we're looking at now shows that type 3B can present later, like in the case of Bridget, and progress more subtly and masquerade as common diagnoses. So, Kathy, you and I spoke about this: ADD, ADHD, autism, autism spectrum traits, learning differences, or these isolated seizure disorders, right? So that variability is one of the biggest barriers to early detection, I would say, right?
Yes, I agree. Yep.
So when you look at Sanfilippo, it's often associated with those early developmental delays and obvious regression, but that wasn't your experience. So what have doctors explained about how type 3B can present differently and how easily it can be misread as things like ADD and autism or these isolated seizure disorders? Like, what are they dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think that those actors are very surprised because Margaret and Bridget really didn't have the typical characteristics of it. A lot of the children experienced chronic ear infections, which my girls did not have, constant diarrhea, which my girls did not have. And I think a big one is ADHD, which our girls did not have. So it could be easily missed when you don't have those symptoms. But like Margaret and Bridget have seizures, not all Sanfilippo kids have seizures. So I don't know the exact number. Like, is it half do and half don't? I'm not exactly sure about that. But if it wasn't for their seizures, they probably would not be diagnosed. It really could be missed.
And this is where awareness becomes a public health issue, right?
Yeah, big time.
And when rare diseases don't fit the textbook, I mean, children fall through cracks in education systems and insurance systems and clinical trial eligibility. And that's the most frustrating part because those cracks cost time. And the most valuable resource these families have, like you, is time. So, Bridget, many people still picture Sanfilippo one way, but that's not your lived experience. I mean, you're studying to be an esthetician. You love beauty, music, and really, I heard you're a great comedian. You love to make people laugh. So, so why is it so important to you that people understand you as a whole person, not just a diagnosis?
Sanfilippo syndrome is just a very small part of my life, and I have so many positive things going on in my life that I'm able to do. So it's not this big thing like cancer. It's like very different than, it's not like a disease or something crazy, that it's just something that I can live with. Like, one of my sister's friends was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm like, "For what?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. I can live with it."
And the truth is you can, because right now
Yeah.
you're doing just fine and you're thriving. Now, let's talk about what the invisible illness creates. So invisible illness creates invisible labor, especially for mom and dad, right? When children look fine, families often face skepticism instead of support, even as the disease quietly progresses. So, Kathy and Marty, as parents, what's the hardest part of knowing your daughters look fine to the outside world while living with a progressive condition that most doctors have never even seen firsthand?
Well, I think a lot of it is, as you mentioned earlier, that they missed a lot of treatment opportunities because of the normal progression of the disease. It's geared more towards the children that just developed skills and then begin to lose those skills, and they try to catch them at that time. With our girls, they weren't on the radar at all until they were teenagers. So a lot of those treatment opportunities had passed. From the outside, it looked like they were just normally developing children, and we believed they were for quite a while. And then when we found out the diagnosis, immediately we looked to treatment options, and there really weren't any available to them, because they are, even in such a rare community, they're ultra rare. I would say they're very different than most of the other children in the community. So there's really not much geared towards them, as far as clinical trials and treatments. So it's almost as if, because we're blessed that they are doing as well as they're doing, but it's also excluded us from a lot of treatment opportunities.
Yeah, and that emotional toll is something research is only beginning to acknowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because parents carry not just the caregiving responsibilities, but anticipatory grief and
Mm-hmm.
advocacy pressure and constant vigilance, and fewer unknowns. That's the real wish, right? Now, Bridget, you've chosen to use your voice through conferences and advocacy and social media, especially for kids who can no longer speak for themselves. What gives you the courage to step into that role at such a young age?
I want to spread awareness about Sanfilippo syndrome and how each person can be different, because I want to make doctors and lawmakers know that there are patients like me out there who are very different than all the other patients who can't walk, talk, and eat.
You are.
Yeah.
You're definitely going where there is no path and leaving a great big trail. You are paving the way for so many, and I think that you're also defying all odds, because they don't even know what the odds are, because they don't know what your subtype is. So,
Yeah.
They're only experts as far as the science allows them to be experts, right? So this is what science backed by humanity looks like, not waiting quietly, but demanding urgency and funding and accountability. And you're doing all of that. Right now, gene therapy for Sanfilippo type A is nearing FDA approval. And for type B, gene therapy trials and enzyme replacement approaches show promise, right? But access remains limited. So families are seeking for expanded access and bridge therapies and faster regulatory pathways, because children can't pause disease progression while the system deliberates, right? So, Kathy, your family has helped raise millions of dollars, not just for your own daughters, but for children across the country. You mentioned in a recent Zoom call efforts tied to potential enzyme replacement therapy access. So when you think about time and urgency and access, what do you need policymakers, regulators, and the medical system to truly understand from a parent's perspective?
I think they need to understand that we have no choices, so we're willing to take those risks. If there's an expanded access, if there's a clinical trial, we know there's pros and cons, but we think it's worth a shot, knowing, dementia is down the road for these children. I think we're willing to get into a clinical trial. I feel like it should be offered more often. Really, expanded access would be wonderful for our girls because of their age especially.
Yeah, I mean, look, rare diseases should not be fatal by default, right? Access should
Right.
not depend on zip code or timing or luck.
Right.
And really, today is their best day, and policy
Yes.
must reflect that reality.
Yes.
That's the simple, it must be frustrating even from your perspective, Marty, where, you have an entire squad of incredible individuals behind you ready to rally. And, without the expanded access and funding, we really got nothing. What does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, there's really only so much we can do. We were given a goal of raising money, and we tackled it head on and was successful. But, the damage is being done to these children every day that they don't have these treatments. So, time is critical. It's critical for all of the children, to preserve them to where they are now, with enzyme therapy, and then hopefully gene therapy in the future that is still quite a ways off, but that is seen as a potential actual cure for them. So it just it's difficult. We try to do everything we can to get them access to therapies, and everything, as you were saying earlier, moves super slow, and time is not on their side at all.
Yeah, yeah. And early diagnosis, like you said, changes everything. Eligibility and preservation and hope. And parents are often the first to know when something isn't right. So, that access is critical. Now, Bridget, if there are families listening right now who see pieces of their own child in your story, seizures, subtle signs, maybe some, uncertainty here and there, what would you want them to know about trusting their instincts and pushing for answers?
I would say if you're not happy with what the doctors are saying, seek another opinion, because they might say that your child has autism or ADD or something else, but you might not see that in your child, and it could be something else that you've never heard of before.
Yeah, you're right. And, even a simple message like that, saves the time that we're talking about, and time saves futures. And parents really belong in rooms with doctors and regulators and lawmakers. You really do, because you're the first line of defense, right? Science doesn't move without pressure, and children don't have time to wait.
Yeah.
Right. Bridget, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being transparent and honest, and thank you for your incredible voice.
No problem.
No problem. And Mom and Dad, Kathy and Marty, you are incredible parents. You are doing such an amazing job. Thank you for sharing your story and your incredible daughter with our platform. And I wish you nothing but happiness and health. And the cure is right around the corner. I have nothing but faith in the process. Trust the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So check them out. Follow them on the gram directly at Bridget Lindq and at K Lindquist #5. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. That was the We Play It Forward segment, brought to you by the We Play It Forward Foundation. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Your Home TV with Kathy Ireland and their channel partners. Head to yourhometv.com for free, family-friendly programming, streaming 24/7.
In business and in life, there's always an upside. Finding it is often the challenge. Having a mindset that looks for it and embraces problems as opportunities is the key to thriving. Finding the Upside with Maria de Lorenzo Reyes explores the transformative power of optimism, featuring visionary business owners, influential leaders, and inspiring everyday people. Tune in and see how they navigate changing conditions with optimism and innovation. Watch the special series One Tough Chick, highlighting resilient and powerful women, streaming on yourhometv.com.
Tune in to A Moment of Xen, Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by CO2 Lift. As we age, our skin loses moisture and elasticity, causing wrinkled skin. You can reverse this aging process with CO2 Lift. CO2 Lift utilizes the powerful benefits of carbon dioxide to lift, tighten, and regenerate your skin. This simple, painless at-home carboxytherapy treatment is scientifically proven to reverse the aging process. You will see reduction in wrinkles, increase luminosity, and improve pigmentation, sagging, skin tone, and radiance.
For more information or to order CO2 Lift, ask your skincare professional or go to co2lift.com.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome back to the Heart of Influence segment, brought to you by DiamondLake and its subsidiaries. And today's conversation is anchored in one essential truth. If you're not controlling the narrative, you're inside someone else's. Here's why this matters, especially right now. According to more than 75% of modern enterprise value now sits in intangible assets like trust and leadership and credibility and governance and reputation. The Edelman Trust Barometer shows that 67% of investors factor leadership, communication directly into valuation decisions. And Harvard Business Review has documented repeatedly that most corporate breakdowns are preceded by narrative erosion, not financial collapse. So in other words, communication failure is no longer a soft issue. It's a material risk. That's why today's Heart of Influence conversation focuses on how narrative discipline is built, protected and executed at scale, particularly inside high visibility, high growth environments. And joining me is Sam Amsterdam. He serves as Global Communications Counsel to DiamondLake. Sam works alongside DiamondLake leadership to ensure that milestones, investments, partnerships, and leadership decisions land with precision, credibility, and long-term trust across markets, media cycles, and global audiences. This conversation isn't about promotion. It's about how influence actually functions behind the scenes. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get to it. So, Sam, McKinsey and HBR research shows organizations rarely fail financially first. They fail credibility first. And narrative risk often shows up long before balance sheet reflect trouble. So, from your vantage point, working inside DiamondLake, where does this narrative breakdown usually begin?
Well, it's particularly pursuant to DiamondLake's operations, which is a cross-strategy investment advisory organization that helps to, in many cases, digitize or tokenize American businesses. Narrative is everything. It's a very opaque business in the arena of decentralized finance. So building a brand, maintaining and growing transparency and trust is paramount. As a strategic communications practitioner, I understand the importance of assuaging concerns that your brand, your business is safe with an organization. And I think it takes modern tactics, but also age-old trust, engagement, transparency, and accountability, principles of ethical leadership that DiamondLake has emblemized that I think are important to modern-day communication techniques.
And what you said, it's at the heart of everything, because that distinction, Sam, is critical. The data shows rebuilding trust can cost up to 5 times more than aligning it correctly from the start. So what you're saying is spot on.
I'm a big fan of the Edelman Trust Barometer, and I understand that tragically, there is year on year a lack of trust in politicians, in governments, in business, even in philanthropies. And it is thus imperative, a business imperative, to promote transparency from within an organization for the purposes of corporate social responsibility and trust between employers and employees, and also between consumers and brands. Consumers are year on year making their decisions for investments or purchases based on the values emblemized by the brand. So now more than ever, trust and transparency are critical.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. And global communication studies consistently show that internal message inconsistency is one of the strongest predictors of public failure. And the cracks show internally before they ever hit the media, right? I mean, we know this better than anyone else. So when you're working with leadership teams, what early warning signs tell you communications and strategy are drifting apart?
Typically, there are too many moving parts. There's no streamlined brand guidelines or messaging document. There are conflicts internally, mixed messages when working with companies in terms of what is our value proposition, what is our corporate social responsibility steer. Without putting down a particular company, companies writ large suffer from the growing pains of the need to promote corporate social responsibility and stewardship. So I think it often takes external counsel to come in and clean sheet the organization's brand guidelines, mission statements. It doesn't have to be a complete reinvention, but I think it gets everybody on board, and you make everybody within the company feel like they're a part of the process.
Yeah, that resonates, especially in a 24-hour media cycle where hesitation itself becomes a headline. Now let's chat precision over volume. So Edelman's CEO Trust Index shows trust actually increases with measured restraint, not frequency, particularly during moments of uncertainty. How do you help leadership determine when communication adds clarity and when saying less protects credibility?
Well, I think one can certainly overspeak. I think it's, I think if you have a mission, you're sticking to the mission, you're articulate about that mission, it's almost telling if you're overly aggressive in espousing that mission. I think that one of the core tenets of any communications campaign is media training, vetting executive leadership, ensuring that they stick to message, and don't overemphasize or overespouse that message. I think sometimes less is more. Folks can make their determinations based on the strict message box that is created. And that's not disingenuous. It's simply about having a message that is streamlined across the company and that resonates organically.
Yeah, and that level of discipline, Sam, is rare, and it explains why some organizations stay steady while others spiral publicly, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think that's especially when you're talking about American businesses that are looking to tokenize. The arena of cryptocurrency and tokenization is, let's face it, still very opaque. There are very few faces that go out and speak as expert commentators or speak about their distinction. It's more these intangibles. That's the arena that we live in. So if you can create distinction, create a core competency and stand out without overspeaking, without overreaching, without overpromising, I think that you can really market effectively as a newly tokenized American business.
Yeah, and so let's chat about, I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. Influence this year in the 2026 landscape. I mean, compared to even 5 years ago, influence has fundamentally changed. I mean, to your point, decentralized media, algorithm amplification, and global scrutiny have really compressed response windows dramatically. So from your global experience, what defines effective influence in 2026?
What defines effective influence in 2026? I think it's about folks, in a sense, crowdsourcing. It's about having your message and measuring how your message resonates. Are others reiterating your message? Are others praising or scrutinizing, and then you respond to the ramifications of your messaging? I think influence means folks are talking about what you've said, what you've done, are reverberating the tenets of your brand. So it's to truly stand out. The barometer, if you will, is how many folks are sharing my story, not necessarily from a followership standpoint, but how often are you hearing what you've said repeated in the news cycle? You don't have to be directly cited, but you can really assert influence if what you're saying is unique, accountable, and credible.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the social media as community is an infrastructure. That is clear as day. So MIT Sloan research shows that communities built around shared values, not constant posting, generate higher trust and longer term engagement. And social platforms, as we know today, don't just distribute information, they shape belief systems, right? So, Sam, how should leaders think about social media as community infrastructure, not just amplification?
I think executives that are looking to appeal to their consumer base need so too to look at social media infrastructures as a sounding board. Are there messages that are resonating? Are they generating a human response? What is how are they counterbalancing what appears on search engines that we know to be done by an algorithm? I think that it's important to listen and to conduct sentiment analysis on the heels of a press release, on the heels of a public statement. How did that resonate? Age-old tactics like focus groups can be very important because that envelops the human element. But I think we need to be, to your point, mindful of the same message appearing on search engines over and over again, not necessarily being the golden truth pertaining to building trust and to listening to your audience.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. That's such an important reframe. And I always say community isn't about reach, it's about relationship, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about influence with integrity under pressure, right? So when you look at the statistics, organizations with values aligned communication outperform peers in trust, in retention, and valuation over time, especially under pressure, right? So when scrutiny is high and stakes are real, what does influence with integrity actually look like in practice?
Well, I think we've seen many cases where there's a lack of integrity, and that any media training will give you crisis communication scenarios where there were epic failures in addressing a crisis and not leading with trust, not leading with inherent values. I think it's an arduous challenge to in the face of a crisis to showcase strength, maturity, sophistication in address, transparency, in addressing the crisis and how a company has responded, highlighting an accountable roadmap ahead to solving the problem is very important. Bringing the user, the consumer in on the ride, I think is very important. You want to treat every challenge like an opportunity. And if there is a burden that a business, and then of course they're innumerable, and it depends really on the business, needs to hurdle, then it's important that you address that accountably and openly with the audience so that they can come on side and take your side as you address the hurdle at hand. So I think it's, rather than a drab holding statement that even lends itself to more scrutiny and has folks asking more questions and maybe making assertions of their own because you've been so not transparent. I think it's important to attract the community to support your mission by being as open and accountable as possible.
Yeah. And that's the difference between influence as control and influence as responsibility.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Sam, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, but we are at the end of our date. This wraps today's Heart of Influence conversation. You were amazing to talk to. I loved everything that you brought to the table. Your insights are really aligned with everything the show's principles are built on. So thank you so much for lending your voice to our platform today.
I really appreciate you having me.
That was the Heart of Influence, brought to you by DiamondLake and its subsidiaries. To learn more, you can head directly to diamondlake.com. And as always, thank you for spending time on A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio, where leadership, influence, and intention intersect. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by MTK Group New York. Experience travel without limits. MTK Travel Club, part of MTK Group New York, offers exclusive access to private jet travel, 5-star resorts, and unforgettable luxury experience designed around you. From seamless departures to personalized itineraries, we elevate every moment of your journey. MTK Travel Club makes extraordinary travel effortless. Visit mtkgroupny.com today to discover a new level of luxury.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. Welcome back, New York City. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Xen Sams. In our Brain Blueprint Express segment brought to you by the Melillo Centers, we'll hear directly from a family touched by the Melillo method. Carmi shares how they came to meet Dr. Melillo and how he changed their daughter's life.
So how this all started was Mila was basically 5 years old when we realized that she is struggling to read the numbers on a dice, and the school informed us about it, which was quite strange, and we thought she'll get over it. But then after another year doing therapy with her and another year, we realized that she's really struggling to read and to read numbers and to memorize words, where a child should start reading at about 5-6 years old. She was really struggling with it. And we went from literally every single therapist that's out there. We did everything that you can imagine, all kinds of testing. Couldn't really establish what was wrong with her. Then at about 6 years, I would say, we went to an OT, which an occupational therapist in Cape Town, that told us about the dyscalculia, and it was the first time that we heard about it. So basically, dyscalculia is it's the number version of dyslexia. So long story short, we discovered Dr. Melillo. Mila's dad read a book on him or about him, and then started reading The Disconnected Kids. And literally 2 weeks later, we had a consultation with him. And he put us on a home-based program. And also by that time, we could establish that Mila was right brain dominant and that her left brain was basically lagging behind. And then 4 or 5 months later, around about September, we came for our first intensive sessions, and we stayed for 2 weeks. So Mila did 2 full weeks at the Melillo Center, and it was just unbelievable. They take care of you here in a way that you can't really describe. You have to come and experience it, because just from the minute that you walk in here, they make you feel so comfortable. Every child is literally for them, it's just a gift and something that they can explore and see where they can help. by January, February, Mila started her new year, grade 6. And I would say by March, April, before her first term exam started ending, we could see such a dramatic change in her. Then, in about June, July, Mila started reading and memorizing words, and she's still not where she can pick up a book and read a book, but she is now at a stage where she can actually spell a word and she can read it after she spelled it, which is such a milestone for us. The improvements that she's made is just unbelievable. It's really, really remarkable. I think we streamlined it. We know exactly where to go from here, and I'm very positive. And I think Mila as well, I think she can see the changes as well.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by the Malillo Method Centers, where hope truly lives, specializing in ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other neurological challenges. Dr. Robert Malillo and his team create personalized treatment plans that go beyond symptom management. Using advanced neuroscience, they help children and adults reach their fullest potential. Families worldwide choose the Malillo Method for answers and results. Begin your journey to better brain health at drrobertmalillo.com.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. Happy New Year. Wishing you all the best for 2026. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio, and across the iHeartRadio digital network. Today's segment is personal, and I know it's going to resonate with so many women listening. This is Sculpting the Future segment, redefining breast enhancement with regenerative, implant-free options, brought to you by Aloclay and Tiger Aesthetics. Now, let me start with this. According to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, breast implant removals have increased steadily over the last several years, while patient surveys show that safety, inflammation, and long-term health concerns now outrank size as the top decision drivers for women considering breast procedures. Now, I lived that shift firsthand. In 2023, I made the decision to explant my breast implants. And if you've been there, you know, explanting often feels like freedom and uncertainty at the same time. You're relieved to be implant free, but you're also left asking, what options exist that don't involve putting another device in my body? In September of this past year, I personally had Aloclay placed in my breasts by today's guest. And the reason this conversation matters is because Aloclay represents a regulated regenerative option that is giving women like me and so many others a new path forward. It's a structural fat allograft regulated by the FDA under human cell and tissue-based product guidelines, meaning it must meet strict federal standards for donor screening, processing, sterility, and distribution. It's not a breast implant or a medical device, but it is being used by experienced surgeons to help address volume, asymmetry, and contour in implant-free ways. And to guide this conversation responsibly, clinically, and transparently, I'm joined by the surgeon who performed my procedure, Dr. Kamakshi Zeidler. She is a board-certified plastic surgeon and founding physician partner at Aesthetics in Silicon Valley. Dr. Zeidler is nationally respected for her work in aesthetic breast surgery and her role as a clinical investigator in FDA-mandated implant studies, and her deeply patient-centered approach is at the heart of this segment. Dr. Zeidler, welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here with you.
Okay, so I want to talk about where women are right now. So when you look at the patient research, it shows that over 70% of women, Dr. Zeidler, are considering aesthetic procedures, and they now rank biocompatibility and long-term safety as top priorities, often above size or shape. And that's a massive shift from even a decade ago. So when patients like me come to you, women who have explanted or want to avoid implants altogether, how do you frame what's realistically possible today?
Yeah, it's a large number of women who actually fall into this category of wanting to have a beautiful aesthetic, feel very comfortable in their skin, but like you said, wanting a choice that's biocompatible. I think that even more so over the last decade, we've seen this shift to wellness. So up until now, options have been fairly limited. I mean, there's ways of rearranging the tissue the way we do in breast cancer reconstruction to give better shape. This often includes some form of a breast lift or tightening and moving the skin around. But sometimes there can be contour irregularities, a lot of scar tissue. Sometimes things are misshapen or asymmetric. and lack a little bit of volume. So over the past decade, fat transfer has been really a workhorse for providing great solutions and symmetry, shaping, and giving some volume. Traditional fat grafting, though, does require downtime. It requires going to the operating room, oftentimes general anesthesia, oftentimes a lot of liposuction. And a number of patients are thin, don't have a lot of fat, or even if there are some fat stores, liposuction is not without consequence. It can create indentations. It can lead to a prolonged recovery, discomfort. And so, if you're a woman who's felt, some loss of femininity from the breast changing, the idea of having your thighs or your abdomen or your back liposuction with risk of some scar tissue isn't always appealing, but it has been a really good option. I think that the downside also is that sometimes you need multiple procedures. So a prospect of getting half a cup to a cup size with multiple operations and going through all of that is sometimes a lot. And so now enter this new option of AlloClay, specifically when it comes to a fat alternative in terms of using your own fat, being able to get something off the shelf without all the need for anesthesia, without all the liposuction. Now this product is falling into that category of an alternative solution. And there's even some benefits of it that I see that are actually in some ways aesthetically better than what we're able to achieve with traditional fat graft.
Wow.
And then I think that also AlloClay has more than just what traditional fat has. So when we do liposuction and purify fat, we get fat cells, your own living fat cells. We usually do this in a way that's very gentle to the body. So we don't want to take all this supportive matrix that exists in your body and create lots of scar tissue. So different from traditional fat grafting, which is just the living cells that are re-injected, AlloClay actually has a large component of extracellular matrix. So all of the stuff that's structural around fat to give it shape comes with this. So when you inject AlloClay, I'm actually able to get more contouring, more shaping, more, say like in the breast, projection, and then we're able to get with traditional fat. And that was one of my early things that I noticed that I thought, gosh, these patients like yourself who've had implants removed and maybe missed some of the structure that an implant provided, AlloClay is really this in between where it could be soft and natural, but still provide some structure.
And that distinction is what mattered to me, right? It wasn't about fixing my explant. It was about expanding my choices. And I think that you said it perfectly. I did not want an invasive procedure, and I didn't want to have a foreign device implanted back into my body after everything that, that my journey entailed. So now let's talk about explaining AlloClay responsibly. So many women listening and watching maybe hearing about AlloClay for the very first time, and clarity is critical, especially around regulation. So how do you explain AlloClay in simple terms, particularly as an FDA-regulated human tissue product, and how it differs from fat transfer and synthetic fillers or implants?
Right. So you really hit the nail on the head. This is a different category. There are some other products in the bioregenerative realm that are similar, things like Sculpture that build collagen, or Renuva that, builds your own fat. But AlloClay is really unique in that it is actual donor fat cells with the matrix. So this is, made by tissue banks that provide lots of medical products. We're very familiar with it as surgeons who specialize in breast cancer reconstruction and breast aesthetics. Acellular dermal matrix is a huge category that really came to breast surgery, in the last decade or two. And this product is processed very much in the same way. So when it comes to like implant surgery, breast reconstruction surgery with this acellular dermal matrix, we have a lot of comfort with how that's processed, how it's cleaned, how it's screened so that there's no transmissible diseases, and that it's a sterile product, and that the body grows into it in a way that it accepts it as its own. And so AlloClay is like the fat version of that, fat and extracellular matrix. So it does come from cadaveric donors and is processed much the way that all these other tissue products are used. Bone grafts are done this way, tendon grafts, a variety of things in medicine that provide, meaningful improvements to quality of life. So this fat option is one that we can use in lots of areas of the body, and using it in the breast, I think, like you mentioned, we're very thoughtful of making sure that this is done in a responsible way.
Yeah, and that explanation alone removes so much fear because understanding this as a regulated tissue, not a foreign device, is the differentiator. Now I want to chat subtle shaping and natural results. So studies on patient satisfaction consistently show that natural look and feel now outrank dramatic size increase when women define a successful outcome, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
how does Aloclay support that subtle shaping, softness, and balance for women who want natural looking results? I've seen it on my own breasts. You are 100% right. It gives you that extra volume. My breasts do feel chunkier and fatter in a very symmetrical way. But I want to know beyond the breasts, or maybe you can expand on that, how it's also helping that subtle shape and softness and balance for women in other areas of the body.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, this has some structure, but it is very, very soft. And patients are really wanting a much more natural look and feel. We see that across like all the ways that people are enhancing their breasts. And Aloclay really does that well. I think that if you think of what the breast gland is, there's glandular structure, but there's a lot of fat interdigitated in there. And so being able to use a very soft agent to create volume and shaping is really wonderful. Like we can't do that with breast implants. We can't do that as effectively with fat. Fat is very soft, but it's almost too soft in some senses that it can't really provide shape. So being able to enhance things right under the skin so that it's not very irregular, being able to put that into the cleavage so that it's soft. We're also using it in other areas of the body, like correcting little contour irregularities in the hips and the buttocks. One of the first patients I treated, I was watching her very closely, and we did a small amount and then came back for a second treatment. And the fact that she came back for yet a third treatment to increase volume, and then referred friends who weren't necessarily in an explant situation, but just needed breasts, wanting a little bit of an enhancement. It speaks a lot when a patient, wants to do more and chooses to refer friends.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And that's where the safety, purification, and FDA regulation come into it all, at least for me. I mean, for women with prior complications or sensitivities, DNA load and tissue purification are not abstract concepts. I mean, they're personal.
Yeah.
So how do you walk patients through donor screening, purification, DNA reduction, and the fact that Aloclay is regulated under FDA HCTP guidelines?
Yeah, I think that I really rely heavily on knowing the companies that produce these products and then the tissue banks that they, get their products from. So similar to other aspects of medicine, I'm someone who's used a lot of acellular dermal matrix in my career and doing all sorts of work with patients, whether it's aesthetics or reconstructive procedures, and seeing how those products interface with the body and heal over time. Some of the issues that we come up with made me very comfortable with these products. And so when I talk to patients who are worried about that, I walk them through the way that tissue banks handle tissue and how strict the screening is. It's not just a very simple process. It's pretty rigorous. And then the way that these products are processed, really removes all of this DNA. Each company has their own proprietary way, but it's checked so that there is no DNA load. So the idea of this tissue going through a rejection process, the way that you get with organ transplantation and all the medications that are needed, that's not really an issue here. There are definitely things that we want to be thoughtful of because this is a medical procedure and there is healing and other things to walk patients through. But I think there's a lot of confidence in how tissue banks are regulated, how the tissue is screened before being used, and then how it's very carefully processed to be sterile and free of DNA.
Yeah. And that transparency right there gives women back a sense of control, which is often what's been missing.
Yes. Yeah.
So asymmetry and refinement. I mean, when you look at the research, you know this better than anyone else. It shows that breast asymmetry is present in the majority of women, yet many feel their only options are invasive or permanent, right? So where do you see Aloclay offering the most value when it comes to asymmetry correction or contour refinement?
Yeah, I mean, we see this a lot in revision surgery. Patients will have a procedure and maybe there's some imperfections. And rather than going back to surgery, this can be something that provides a little enhancement. If one side is just a little fluffier than the other, or the cleavage lines are a little bit off, this can provide a meaningful improvement, again, without having to go back to the operating room, just in the office. I think when it comes to patients who have a little bit of asymmetry in their breast size, like they really like their breasts, they have good shape. I saw a patient recently who had, like a half a cup difference on one side. The idea of doing a simple procedure in the office, driving herself home, and just using a little bit of product on one side to have a very symmetric overall look and feel is very appealing. The alternative is like, okay, well, then you put an implant on one side and now they fundamentally just feel different, structurally look different, and can be a different shape. And so oftentimes in those cases are like, oh, if you're putting an implant on one side, do it on both. And then the tissue's different. And so now you need a lift and big incision. So a mild asymmetry can turn into like a very big operation, sometimes with a lot of, maintenance required, and results of that can be very good. But,
does this pair well with current implants that are implanted? Can you work around the current implant?
Absolutely. I think the majority of surgeons using alloclay in the breast start off with, enhancing the cleavage lines, or, the top part of the breast where sometimes there can be some visibility. So we have a lot of comfort with fat grafting there, but using alloclay that's been a very popular area to use it.
Right. I mean, and that level of customization changes the entire patient experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's hardly been a product that I've been more excited about as a new category that makes such a difference in the way that we have options for patients than this. I mean, there's been lots of innovation in breast, and we have new implants and all sorts of great innovation, but this is a real game changer in changing the way we do procedures and the way that we can provide results in a customized way.
Right. And what you just said is what I want to end the conversation with, where this category is headed, because we've alluded to this being its own micro category here, which it is. So across aesthetics and regenerative solutions are one of the fastest growing areas of innovation, particularly among women prioritizing long-term wellness, right? So we know that regenerative solutions are at the heart of all of this, and this is one of those solutions. And really it's providing, not only is it a regenerative solution, it's providing a solution to a big problem in the marketplace, right? It's not just in its own category. This is answering many, many problems, right? So looking ahead, where do you see regenerative structural fat allografts like alloclay going, and how might this reshape implant-free breast enhancement?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, this will be a starting point for a lot of patients looking to enhance their breasts. Instead of choosing implants in your 20s and maybe having, operations over the course of a lifetime, even though that technology has gotten much better. I see, much like some people will dabble with fillers in the face before having facial surgery, that we'll see an entire non-invasive component of breast aesthetics really come about before people choose open, more significant surgical interventions.
Well, this has been an enlightening conversation. Dr. Z, thank you for this conversation and for your care, and more importantly, the care you bring to every patient. I can attest firsthand that you are available around the clock for the ones you serve. So thank you so much for being you.
Absolutely. Thank you for shedding light on this really exciting new category.
Now, if you're listening and exploring implant-free regenerative options, you definitely want to visit alloclay.com. You're going to get redirected to tiger-aesthetics.com. But for simplicity reasons, it's ALLOCLAE. That's alloclay.com. And always consult with a board-certified plastic surgeon. You could head directly to aesthetics.com. That's aesthetics TX. And check them out directly on the gram at Dr. Zeidler and at aesthetics. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. That was Sculpting the Future segment, brought to you by Alloclay and Tiger Aesthetics. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tortora Promotions, specializing in white glove digital marketing, social media management, professional videography, and PR services. Based in New York City and partnering with hundreds of businesses nationwide, they deliver proven strategies that bring more customers through the door. If your old marketing methods aren't keeping up, Tortora Promotions can step in to help you stay ahead. Grow your brand and drive real results. Reach out today and follow them on Instagram at Tortora Promotions. Your business deserves it.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. Welcome back, New York City. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome back to the Clean Collective Express segment brought to you by Crunchy. Now, when you see shimmer in your makeup, you're often seeing mica. It's a mineral used to create glow, luminosity, and light reflection. But here's what most people don't know. Much of the world's mica supply has been linked to unsafe mining practices and child labor. That's where Crunchy draws a firm line. Crunchy only permits the use of ethically sourced mica that is free from child labor, no exceptions. Every manufacturer of Crunchy's color cosmetics is required to provide full documentation from the mica's raw material supplier for each individual formulation. That means traceability, accountability, and transparency at every single step. And Crunchy doesn't source mica from just anywhere. They work with a select number of fully vetted and trusted suppliers chosen for their ethical standards, not convenience or cost. Because clean beauty isn't just about what goes on your skin. It's about protecting the people behind the product. That's the Crunchy difference. Beauty with integrity from the source to your skin. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Cleanomic. Cleanomic zip bags are certified compostable. They break down into nutrient-rich fertilizer that nourishes the earth. They're BPA-free, so no harmful chemicals leak into your food. Available in snack, sandwich, quart, and gallon sizes. They ship straight to your door. No more store runs. Plus, get free trash bags for life with the subscription. Protect your food and health from hidden microplastic particles by heading to cleanomic.com today.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome back to the Hydration with Heart segment brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut, the clean, ultra-hydrating beverage fueling your health, your hustle, and your heart. Today's conversation hits at the core of something urgent, the future of our youth. A 2024 CDC report found that 1 in 3 teenagers struggles with chronic stress or anxiety, and the Surgeon General continues to warn that young people are facing the highest levels of disconnection and lack of mentorship in modern history. Meanwhile, athletic participation, once a universal stabilizer, is declining in underserved communities due to lack of access and structured coaching. So today's headliner couldn't be more fitting. From Pro Bowl powerhouse to community powerhouse. Deshaun Goldson on mentorship, legacy, and raising the next generation of champions. Because at a time when leadership feels scarce, here's a man who is quietly transforming lives from the inside out. Deshaun Goldson is not just a former NFL safety, not just a 2-time Pro Bowler or first-time All-Pro. He's a mentor, a coach, an entrepreneur, and community architect using his platform to lift families and build confident young leaders. Whether coaching in the NFL or developing the San Fernando Valley Youth Chargers, Deshaun embodies what research from the Aspen Institute calls the athlete mentor effect. When young people have just one consistent adult investing in them, their likelihood of graduating high school and avoiding high-risk behaviors nearly doubles. He also leads the Highest Point Foundation. It's an organization committed to providing underserved youth with opportunities, stability, and emotional safety. 3 pillars psychologists say are predictors of lifelong success. Deshaun, welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you on. I want to chat about purpose after the NFL, right? So many elite athletes experience what psychologists call identity foreclosure after retirement, when the career ends, but the identity hasn't been rebuilt. Yet you walked straight into purpose-driven leadership. When did you realize that your legacy wasn't going to be measured just by what you did on the field, but by the lives you would shape off of it?
Well, for me, it all started, just doing community outreach, like while I was playing. And then shortly after I retired, like I got into coaching high school, and I enjoy it. I enjoy, the googly eyes of the kids when they saw me step onto that field and just hearing my voice. And I noticed that, players was reaching out for me for advice. And I mean, not even about like playbook stuff or football. It was just more about like this life and handling pressure and, staying on track, discipline, things of that nature, and just bouncing back from setbacks. And I had a lot to share with them. And I mean, I just felt like it was my calling.
You stepped into your calling, literally.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly grounded. And it aligns with research showing that athletes who transition into mentorship-led roles experience higher life satisfaction than those who don't. So your journey really proves that.
Yeah, for sure.
Without a doubt. Now, I want to talk about the youth chargers structure, discipline, and the modern athlete. So studies from the Youth Sports Institute show that early exposure to structure and positive disciplines reduce dropout rates in teens by up to 45%. Your program clearly prioritizes both. So what drove you to build the San Fernando Valley Youth Chargers, and what do you believe young athletes need most today beyond speed, skill, or physical development?
I think growing up, I mean, the sports kept me out of trouble. It gave me structure, and surrounding myself with adults and young adults who actually genuinely care about, my future. And I felt like I always knew I wanted to create something that wasn't just a team, but good support system for these kids. So with the San Fernando Valley Charger, it gave me a chance to build a program where every kid, can feel heard, seen, coached, and even valued.
What you're offering really, Deshaun, fills a gap that statistically changes outcomes. You are doing some great work there.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Highest Point Foundation. So impact beyond the field, so to speak. Community foundations often become lifelines, especially when resources are scarce. In fact, families who participate in structured youth programs report improved emotional regulation and academic performance within that year. Can you share a moment from the Highest Point Foundation that made you stop and say, yeah, this is why we do this?
Honestly, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, just being connected to the community, I feel like is beyond, expectations. I mean, there's so many moments, really. I mean, the things that I do out of love and care, like the give backs, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, the camps we put on for these children. The turnouts are motivating.
Social workers say it only takes one stabilizing force to change a child's life path. And what you're describing is exactly that. You are that life force for them. You're doing something that maybe not everybody is patting you on the back for, but so much more important than any job on the field, right? Because you're really changing lives.
No, definitely. I mean, I feel like this generation and these kids need that.
Now, playing in the NFL means, when you were playing, that meant mastering the technical and psychological side of high performance environments. But when you're coaching, coaching requires emotional intelligence, patience, and really shaping identity.
Right.
What lessons from the NFL, both as a player and now that you're coaching, do you bring into your youth programs that kids might not get anywhere else?
That's actually the question. I mean, I think the biggest lesson I bring from playing and coaching my career, all rooted in consistency, accountability, and this resilience. In NFL, you learn quickly that talent alone won't get you where you want to go. So, I mean, it's about work you put in on a day in, day out, and the mindset I try to instill in these kids. I mean, it's like you have to put in this work every day. It's not just about your talent. Your talent will only get you so far. It's really what you do beyond the closed door when nobody else is looking. So I'm just trying to instill that in some of the youth now, so it's easier for them as they get older.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Performance studies show that athletes who learn emotional resilience, like you just described, outperform their peers by like 30% in adulthood. So you're instilling that really early. Yeah. And you're successful. You're the definition of truly successful after you've retired. Only 12% of professional athletes transition successfully into long-term business ventures. So you're part of that rare group that not only transitions, but thrives. How did your mindset I want to talk about mindset as an elite athlete. Prepare you for entrepreneurship. What guidance do you give athletes preparing for life after the league?
I think being an elite athlete, really just taught me how to thrive under pressure. Like we talked about a little bit, like staying committed when things get hard, turning like your obstacles into motivation. Like as sports is continue, you see in games how momentum switch and change like during the course of a game. It's also how to keep you cool and how you maintain that. But I think entrepreneurship requires the same mentality, that relentless belief, that structure and the willingness to keep going when everybody wants to stop or don't want to do their job,
Yeah,
That's the same.
that's an important insight, especially considering how few athletes get real business education before retirement, right?
Right. That's a real thing.
Now, national data also shows that mentorship and character development are the strongest predictors of a young person's lifelong success, more than talent, more than income, or even academic performance. So when you look at your young players, your community kids, the next generation, what values do you hope follow them long after the game is over?
Oh man, that's another great question. I feel like the core values I hope to instill, in the next generation is like I explained, is just really more like the discipline, the integrity, and the resilience. Some of the things that as athletes and football players that we, some of the pinnacles that we try to strive for, But these values shape not only great athletes but great human beings. And I feel like long after the game, the discipline will guide their habits. The integrity will define their character, and the resilience will define, their character and how far they go in life. So these are some of the things that I live on and try to, instill in some of these young kids.
That's beautiful. And those values become generational, right? That's what breaks cycles.
All right. Definitely.
Your evolution from Pro Bowl powerhouse to community powerhouse is the reminder we all needed today, that greatness isn't defined by stadiums, but by the hearts you strengthen along the way. And your youth program and the Highest Point Foundation are rewriting the story for kids who deserve to be seen, guided, and believed in. So you're doing amazing things.
I appreciate that.
To support his mission, you could follow them at Highest Point Foundation on Instagram and get involved. And a single act of mentorship, remember, can shift an entire future. You can also check him out personally on the gram at Hawk_INC. This has been the Hydration with Heart segment, brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut, hydrating purpose-driven conversations and the people who lead them. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut.
Discover the refreshing taste of 100% pure coconut water that actually tastes great. Naturally sweet with no artificial flavors or added sugar. It's packed with electrolytes to keep you hydrated throughout your day. And with 10% of profits going to charity, every sip makes a difference. Pure taste, pure goodness. Experience nature's Gatorade. Visit Once Upon a Coconut or naturesgatorade.com.
Well, that's a wrap, my dear friends. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Xen Sams. Remember to join me right here on A Moment of Xen every Saturday, or you could head directly to amomentofxen.com for live listening links and episode downloads in your city. Also, remember that we're live on Traverse TV Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. We upload on our YouTube channel Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern, and all episodes of A Moment of Xen are available on Your Home TV streaming platform. You can head directly to mox.yourhometv.com. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Xen. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors that continue to make this show possible. And remember that happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it. We'll be back next week.